Good morning, everybody. It is Keith Salmon, and we are here. I am here in Santa Monica, California, and Anna Liebel is joining us from Iceland this morning. Good morning, Anna.
Good afternoon for me. Good morning, Kate.
Good afternoon, exactly. So hold on one quick second. I just have to do this one quick little thing here. Perfect. And so my name is, again, Keith Salmon, and this is the $1 Million Story series. Basically, I believe that everyone has $1 million story. And even if you haven't found it, even if you haven't been able to articulate it yet. And so my belief is that if you hear enough of these $1 million stories and you're ready to receive it at the right time, it's a synchronicity game. And if you hear the right story at the right time and you're ready to receive it, it may indeed change your life. And that's why I wanted to talk to Anna. I've met Anna a while back on a Zoom call on a program that we were both involved in. And she noticed that I had a statue of a wolf in the background. And it's interesting. It just started a conversation between the two of us. And so very interesting for me is how far reaching our world in the online space is. That it just the miracle from being able to talk to each other across the world is quite fascinating to me. I come from a generation where the moon landing was, our miracle, and this is certainly a miracle to me. So, Anna, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us you are a leadership and team building consultant, and tell us, it sounds a little bit corporate to me. Is that true?
Yeah, Kate, it is true. But I want to back a bit for a moment. And first of all, I like how you compare our being able to communicate with each other and connect to each other to landing on the moon. It's an achievement of a different kind. I agree about that, and I really love how tiny the internet is making our world, that we actually are able to communicate with each other and join forces and serve each other despite the kilometers and thousands of kilometers in between. I really enjoy this part of the technological development. And talking about the synchronicity, you mentioned this word. It was actually funny how you invited me on the interview, because it was literally the same day when I thought it could be awesome to be interviewed by Keith, because he's so good at asking questions and pulling out those parts of the story that I might be blind about. They say that you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. And that moment, that day, I felt like, okay, I'm sitting in this picture, or I am, I need a perspective, outside perspective. And I was like, Keith is good about that. I should talk to him about being interviewed by him, so that we can actually share my story with your audience, and hopefully it can help some of you guys. But at the same time, I'm also getting some value by getting the fresh perspective on what I'm doing. And it was funny, because you actually wrote the same day, "Hey Anna, why don't you come as a guest to my show?" I was like, talking about the synchronicity.
Those things are, it is synchronicity. And it's sometimes, I think a lot of those things happen to us and we may not be aware of them. I mean, that was complete synchronicity, because we use the format of the Facebook Messenger somehow or another. We just connected that way that day, within minutes, seemed like, and that was pretty bizarre. But I think what in my life, those synchronicity moments are around us all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like you say, you can't see it when you're in it. It's sort of like, I don't want to be gruesome or anything like that, but if you're a frog boiling in water, you kind of get, it sort of like creeps up, and they're the last people to know about it, or the last reptiles to know about it. So it's really, really great, because I know that a lot of people, especially new people that come into online, either if it's Facebook or LinkedIn, and other ways of marketing and other ways of sales. I think a lot of people have confusion. I'm involved with a group right now where the difference between sales and marketing is creating some conflict, and it's kind of interesting how that works. And if you are coming from one mindset, going into corporate or going into consulting versus coaching, there's lots of words that bounce around, and suddenly you can find yourself either in a game or kicked out of a game based on just the jargon that we are using. So I know that you hang out on LinkedIn quite a bit, and so but let's go back for a second and let's sort of define what the leadership and team development it is. And I'm going to fix that banner right down there because I had a little bit of a crash there. But why don't you tell us that, and I'll just fix that thing while we're doing that.
Absolutely. So it's good that you're talking about the confusion about the terms, because I always need to include that kind of glossary discussion in my talks or in my talking with potential clients or with the clients, just that we're on the same page, because I think it is very essential that we actually talk the same language and mean the same things by using the same words. And talking about that, you mentioned the word coach or coaching, and that's something that I've been using, and I'm still using it because people can relate to that in some way. But I always, as soon as we get a bit further into the conversation, I always explain what I mean by coach, or why I'm not seeing myself as a usual coach in a way. And I'm talking about that because I work with the personal development, and yes, we'll go into the corporate and the leadership and team development parts of my work, but it all comes to personal level. Whatever I do, whichever level I work on, it's always coming to us people, because the team deliverables depend on the communication between people, and communication between people depends on my personal expectations of what we are talking about and my understanding of your situation and those kind of things. So it always comes to the person in my world. And when I talk about the coaching, I'm saying that the traditional way of seeing coaching by the International Coaching Federation, it is about asking questions, not guiding, not giving answers to people, but really creating space for them to reflect. And I don't have anything against that. I'm actually using that myself as the client. I always make point out of that, and it's not like I'm bashing that part of coaching and saying that my way is the right way. I usually see our ways as two different tools that actually fix different, or serve different needs. And my coaching usually goes deeper, and I get on more personal level with people, and that's something that it might be considered unprofessional in the traditional coaching, but that's the way for me to get into those issues that people are usually not creating space for themselves to get into, if you know what I mean. And that's why I'm saying, okay, I do use word coaching because I can, of course, come up with my own terms, but no one will relate to that, and they won't be able to open up for the conversation. So I need to open up the conversation, and then we can go into deeper into discussing what exactly I'm doing.
Right. So do you find, is there any blurry lines between the word coaching and consulting to you? I find that it is, and I have to sort of make my the distinction when I'm in that conversation initially and feel them out just the tiniest bit and whatever they're comfortable with. I mean, even in my world, it's like sometimes if you're on camera coaching, if I was going into production where my background is in editing, if I'm behind the camera helping someone do their on camera, I would have been traditionally called the director. But so people who aren't used to that, they now it's on camera coaching. There's some things that are similar, and coaching, consulting, depending on who our clients are. If they see me as a consultant, then I'm a consultant, and even though I'm coaching them, then they just say whatever they're comfortable with.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I see happening, and which conversations I end up in as well. Just yesterday, I had a coaching conversation. It was a tryout conversation or coaching session with one of the corporate clients. So the company is offering my services to their employees, and for this guy has never had coaching, he said. And I was like, okay, what made you curious about the session, and why did you say yes to that session? And he said, well, I saw the word coaching and I've never done that, so let's do it. And I was like, okay, so what is coaching to you? And he's like, well, I've never done it in a personal way, but I know word coach from the sports. And I was like, what does the coach do? And he said, a coach is someone who is helping me become a better athlete. So I assume with the personal development, you are a person who will help me become a better person. And I was like, great, now we have a definition that we can actually work with. So this is very important to have those discussions. And yes, I use the consultant because to me, it's a bit more an umbrella term that actually can come, and that's again something to derive from the coaching of the classical definition of it, because that would mean that I just come and I create space for people to talk about some things, and I ask them questions that they can actually find their answers. But a consultant to me is also a person who comes and actually says, okay, this is what I see as a gap, this is what you need to do. So it's more directional in a way. But I'm still using a lot of coaching techniques there, right? It's not only me giving the answer, it's a lot of digging deep and understanding the things so that we can actually together create the answer. And I can give you parts of the answer, or I can give you some directions. Okay, now you need to practice this thing, or this practice for your personal development so that we can actually get to the next level.
Right.
So it's a combination, but I agree with you. Those words have been used interchangeably for good or for bad.
Well, I think that it depends on, if we're going to use the the analogy of sports and coaching, and I mean that's where I think of it. I usually have over here, sometimes I have a picture of Vince Lombardi, American football coach legend. The Super Bowl trophy is the Lombardi trophy, and he would be one of the motivational coaches. Not to mention, strategy. So, like, if you were to look at American football, just as a quick example, a visual example that a lot of people here can relate to is that, is there the New England Patriots dynasty with only Tom Brady, or with only Bill Belichick? Or did we need both of them? And there isn't a football team that doesn't have a head coach, doesn't have a strength coach, doesn't have a quarterbacks coach, doesn't have a defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, all the stuff that creates a combination of all those things. So if our client, if we're talking about team building, has a team of 4 or 5 people, it's how do you work together? How do you work with a common goal? How do you work with your strategy? Motivational is one thing, but if you have no strategy, it doesn't get results. The results are in football is to win. The results are not just to be feeling good about yourself. I mean, but however, that's part of it. Feel good about yourself, and then you can win. There's always an ultimate goal of winning. So it is interesting. We have to wear a few different hats and make them comfortable, but get them actually uncomfortable sometimes, because change is usually uncomfortable. If I have had that, I'm sure that we all have, where you have a client, and if they talk you into making it easy for them, they're just sort of manipulating me as the coach to make it easy on them, and then the results don't come in, and it's a tough sport that we're in.
I love, first of all, the comparison analogy that you've used to the football, because yes, for the team to be great, it's not only one person who has to cover. We're all good in our things, right? And we have our zone of genius, each of us. And the strength of the company, if we talk about the corporate environment, is to find the zone of genius of every person and bring it to the table so that we can actually create the synergies. We can create that magic that happens when we actually, open up the potential of the people and actually help them grow in the way that they want and in the way that sparks joy in them. Because yes, you said about that, the goal is to win the game, but for that to be a sustainable goal, that you actually win a game after game, season after season, you need to enjoy it. So that's where the motivation comes. You have the short-term goals, but then I'm talking about the sustainability of that. And there we talk about the joy and the motivation, because those are the things that keep it going, that actually give you the energy to continue, to give you the motivation to keep developing yourself, keep challenging yourself. And I really loved what you said about the kind of our reality versus our client's reality in a way, because this is so important. That's really true. The best results that you can give to your client is when you actually bring them to your reality. And if they drag you into their reality, you can't help them because they have too much ego attached to their problems and they can't get out of that. There will be a lot of resistance for you offering solutions to get out of the situation. So for that, you need to really drag them out of that. Find those underlying problems that don't have ego attached to them, and then it's so much easier to work and actually bring amazing results to the client.
Right. Yeah, that uncomfortableness. I think that there's always a first step. There's the first step of the willingness to even reach out, even no matter what our sales and marketing techniques are. They reach out to you, even if they like your post somewhere. That's an action step. It's something that is one tiny little baby step in the right direction. And sometimes it's like kind of the part of the brain says, I do want to help. I do want some help. But I'm not ready to go on television and tell the world that I want help yet, but this is a little bit of a sort of a thing. So, well, that's awesome. Would you mind if I asked you a couple of questions about where, basically it's what we do, and then it's like why we do it, and how did it's basically how did you end up on this show today? So you live in Iceland. Are you from Iceland originally?
No, I am originally Ukrainian.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you went to, I know that you went to school over there.
Yeah, I did my bachelor, so I can walk you a bit through the stages. Yeah. So I did my bachelor in computer science in Ukraine, and then I wanted to experience the education system somewhere else in Europe. So I applied to a couple of programs in Sweden. I got into 3 out of 4 programs for master education, and I studied in Sweden. I did a master in international project management, and part of that was actually 1 term in England for project management master. So I actually have the degree from both countries. So when I moved to Sweden, I fell in love with the city where I lived, and I decided to stay after 1.5 years. So 3rd term of my studies was in England, and there I realized how much I miss my new home, the Swedish one. And that made me feel like, okay, I actually want to start learning the language and try to get a job after my studies. That's what I did. I found a job in the project management, first a coordinator in a big company there. And at some point, I became a consultant and worked in a couple of different industries, again in project management in different roles. And then we moved to Iceland because of my husband's job. So he's in research in academia, and it was a time for his next step, which would include a relocation. And we were discussing where to go, and we liked Iceland, so we're like, okay, let's try that country. That's how I ended up here. And when we moved here, we had a tiny baby. When we moved, she was 5 weeks old. So the first a year or so, I was on maternity leave and had some time to reflect what I wanted to do. And the thing is that when we were moving here, I was planning to go back to corporate. But the more maternity leave I was having, the more I realized, no, I actually want to build my legacy. Mm-hmm. And I was checking some companies, playing around with the thought how I can do it as part of some other company. And at that moment, I haven't found any like that. And I decided, okay, I'll try to build my own company because I do want to create something bigger than myself. And I just wanted to try that path. And I started coaching, or I started taking paying clients for individual coaching, which I've been doing just as my free time hobby for free with friends and colleagues for a couple of years already. So I started doing that in January this year. And then how I came to corporate was, again, time to reflect. Having the time during the vacation this summer, I was thinking of how is it going for me? How do I feel in my business? And those kind of things. And I realized that I did miss the team part of my previous job. So that's what I enjoyed most in the project management when I was doing it. I've been doing it quite technical projects, developing cars, inhalers, and those kind of things. But it was always the people part that really made me come to work and really, enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I am missing building this synergy, improving the communication between people, helping them build relationships on a deeper level in a more positive and sustainable way. And I thought, okay, then it's time to go back to corporate as a consultant. And that's what I'm doing right now. So I come in and coach leaders, and that's why leadership consultant, but then also team development. So with some of my clients, I can actually, I do both parts. So I coach leaders, but then I also go and coach the team, and I'm creating the connection between the two in a way. Mm-hmm. So bridging the communication in a way, or helping them manage their expectations and communicate their expectations in a better way. So yeah, that's how I got into the corporate world now.
So it sounds to me like sometimes it takes us a little bit of distance to see what we really love. And then what we really love is no coincidence that we're really good at it.
Yeah.
And then if you figure out that you're really good at it, by sometimes just like that separation, it's something that you can bring more to it. If it becomes your shop and you can bring your own, like you say, you're already talking about building a legacy. Everything we do is part of your legacy building. And that's awesome. That is, I think that the internally, there must be something that's burning inside of you that says that this is where I belong. Mm-hmm. Would you say that have you found that part of it? I think
Absolutely.
you have. There's like a gravitational pull back to your zone of genius, zone of expertise.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and that's actually a good point. Just yesterday, we discussed it with some other entrepreneurs in the program where we both are, about this. When you want to leave your corporate, you usually feel like, okay, I don't want to be in the corporate, or meaning that I don't want to do anything of what I'm doing right now. But usually something gets you into that part of the corporate. So there is some part of that actually makes you be joyful, makes you excited. It's just that you don't see it, and you need to get this perspective. And that's what often happens, when people leave the corporate, they move to Bali, get a shack on the beach, and open up a cafe, just because that's totally opposite to their career back in the corporate. But then they start missing things, and that's what happened to me. And I thought I'm actually going into the things that that I'm passionate about, right? And actually, I still love my individual coaching and clients that I have a relationship that way. But I realized by having this perspective and having this distance, as you say, that I do miss the team part of it, and I want to be part of some team dynamics and contribute to better, healthier relationships in some group.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what I've found, my background comes from similar. I mean, because I think of myself as a kind of a wild card gunslinger type of freelancer, but only because. But the fact is my clients were corporate. My clients were an advertising agency has this personification of like some free world or something like that. It's as corporate as it gets. I mean, there are giant companies. They have giant account planning. They have giant media buying departments. They have, the creative part is the creative departments is who I normally would work with. So I kind of ignored that. So the fact that they are big corporate, and the minute that you're doing commercials for big corporate America, I was in corporate. I just kind of felt like I didn't have that, but that's just how it made me feel better about that. But if we're working with entrepreneurs, the first thing that we are told to do is as a individual entrepreneurs, like in our space, is to build a team. So it's sort of like it's not contrary, but it's like what we're trying to do is make them corporate. Where in a very simple sense, it's just the different size of it. I go back to when we first early 90s. Now I became partners in a company that was a creative editorial company that we did a lot of advertising, television commercials, and I got interviewed once for a magazine, a trade paper, and basically they were talking about this is brick and mortar. We have to get a space. You have to get all that traditional type of business stuff. And basically my answer to all the questions was, you get enough work. In those days, it was film. You start to collect all these assets from projects that you have, like literally boxes of film. Boxes of film. You have more boxes of film. That's evidence that you have more work. And all of a sudden, you need an office. So that was as simple and bare bones as how that thing. You need someone to answer the phones because people are calling you. You need someone to run around to the film labs. You need to all this stuff. And it was like, the work. What happens first? Do you find the space? Do you find the building? Or do you find the work? And I think sometimes we want to build these big giant online spaces, these big giant machines, and all these things. And I think some people kind of lose sight of what their original vision was, with all the infrastructure and things like that. So that was kind of a journey into how kind of confusing it can get, and how you can, how you can get lost along the way.
Yes, totally. And yeah, sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was just going to say, and having some help from someone like yourself is something that, they have that objectivity. They can look at it from the outside and say, just this one little thing, just like a coach in halftime. That's why they have halftime in the Super Bowl, is so you can make adjustments, and you come out and win the game. And so that's, I just reflecting on what you were saying, and comparing it to the journey that, and if you're around long enough, you have several of those sort of like transitional points, and how you help someone through probably a time like this is pretty important for you to be objective with your people.
And it is a tricky game, as you said. It can be very confusing, and we can get very lost. And that's why I'm always making a point that even me as a coach, I always make sure that I have mentors and coaches myself. Because as I said, I can be the best coach to my clients, and they have amazing transformations, and I'm getting messages that really make me tear up. But at the same time, I'm sometimes forgetting to give those advice to myself. Right. And that we need to have someone who is looking at our life more objectively, and our career more objectively, and our business more objectively, and saying, hey, Anna, you're forgetting about this. And running this business in early stages, for me, I found it very challenging at the moment with balancing these kind of short-term goals, like getting more clients, but also the long-term goals, because I do want to build a legacy. And that means that I should not focus on only kind of burning off or putting off fires right now. I need to focus on how to create a strong foundation for the business to grow and to scale, and for me to bring more value to the customers and to more customers. So there it's a tricky balance, and it's always so much easier to get distracted or to focus on those kind of smaller things because of the instant gratification. And they're also important, we do need to get profitable soon enough. We do need to pay our bills and so on. And that's where the short-term goals and activities can help. But then at the same time, if we don't set some time in our weeks to schedule that strategic thinking work, and to schedule the time with our coaches, then we just continue running and spinning the wheel forever. Until we burn ourselves out.
I was going to say that that's where the burnout comes, and
exactly.
I don't think burnout is an old overused term. I think it's a kind of an underused term, because it's people are in denial when they're into the burnout phases. They're really denying that that's happening. I went through that, the Iron Man syndrome, where it's like, you have a corporation, you've got a small company, you've got, I think, even sometimes the family life and the business life kind of, they blend, they commingle ideas of like providing for the family, there's mouths to feed, so it's like, I would, you would defend your space and your business like the Alamo. You would defend it at all costs to feed your people, and then lose sight of the overall bigger picture.
It's tragic.
So I'm a firm believer that I say that your story is your most valuable asset. I hear a lot of transitional / transformational realization in your story. And if you kind of live through some of those transitions and transformations, basically, if you've lived it, you can teach it, and you've lived through some of those things, and keep coming back to the people. You're a people person. You've got great conversation, and you've got, the story of where you've come from and your journey to where you are right now, even just geographically. Those things are challenges. I'm sure that those were some challenges doing those things. I put a post up on Facebook the other day, as it just occurred to me. It was something that I had thought about, because I've lived 2,000 miles away from my hometown for many years now, and I still, like I say, when we opened up our conversation this morning, I'm still thrilled to be having a conversation like this. It's impossible to even think of. Basically, just was saying that those challenges of moving away from home, and staying away from home, and then even like in a situation like now, people have been prevented from going back to their hometown. So people had all kinds of answers about how far, just literally in miles, have they gone. And some people had that comment. It's like, well, it was 2,000, 2,500 miles, but I moved back. And some people said 1.7 kilometers or something like that. And it's just an interesting thing to think of, because that's part of how we have developed. And when you're talking to someone who lives in their hometown, they have a little bit different mindset of even the strategy of where they get their coffee in the morning. It's a different thing. I have found my family back where I grew up they have entirely different lives.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with those lives. Absolutely, right? I have some friends who are still living in their hometown, and when I come back to Kyiv in Ukraine, we have great conversations. But I choose what to talk to them about, so that it actually can be a great conversation. Because some things in my life they will not understand, and they will not appreciate, or they will not enjoy talking about. But there are still a lot of things that we can talk about and have deep conversations and enjoy it, and keep our relationship and connection, right? So it's really about choosing. And I actually want to share a realization that I got a couple of years ago about this home thing, because for me it's a very confusing term anyways nowadays, since I started moving, because I moved from Ukraine to Sweden. I had no expectations. I actually picked Sweden out of all the European countries because I was looking for a country where I could do the education for free, where there was no tuition, or there was a possibility to get a scholarship because of the financial background of my family. And there was mainly the Nordic countries, those Scandinavian countries. So then I opened Wikipedia, because I had no clue about the Scandinavian countries. And I read an article about each country on Wikipedia. And I was like, okay, Sweden sounds best. So that's my knowledge of the country where I came. And then I moved in late August, started my studies. And then for Christmas, I went home. And already on the way from the airport to my mom's work, because I wanted to get to her office first, I realized I'm not coming back. There was this feeling that I actually came to visit my parents, even though it's been 4 months. And before that, I've lived for 21 years in there, And it was just something that resonated with me more in Sweden in that moment. And the thing is that it's not like I was running away from Ukraine. I liked my life there. I was building, I had a great social circle. I was starting building my career while still studying, and so on and so forth. But I'm thinking about it, that might have been my mindset, that once I've moved, I opened up my mind to seeing the new place as a new home, and see what kind of perspective and what kind of experiences that would bring to me. And it's the same now when I moved to Iceland, and we are committing to making this our home. And it's not like I'm not calling the other two homes home anymore. It's just that these are my homes. And the realization that I started talking about was actually I had a conversation with another Ukrainian who is older than me, and she also lived in Sweden with her American husband, and they were discussing to move back to one of the home countries, so either her to Ukraine or his the US, because their daughters were growing up, they were kind of getting into the teenagers, and they were like, we want them to feel rooted somewhere, feel like they belong somewhere to one of our cultures. And they're like, okay, in Ukraine it will be more difficult for my husband to find a job, and so on and so forth, so we're moving back to the US. And that's what they did. And I was reflecting on that. Where are my roots? And that question has been struggling me. It has been my struggle, you know. And I felt bad that I didn't feel like I had roots in one place. And then early 2017, I went to Thailand for my 1 month to travel around. And part of that month was actually 10-day Vipassana. That's a silence retreat. So you get in the middle of nowhere, you give away your passport, all the devices, all the books, and they just keep you silent and you meditate for 10 hours per day for 10 days. And I had a walk-in meditation, and I don't remember, it was 6th or 7th day. And it really kind of came to me. I was looking at the tree, and you know, in the jungle there are those trees who have their main stem, but then they keep, like, they grow roots more. So there were branches of the tree, and from the branches there were the kind of branches coming down into the ground, which were becoming the roots. And let's realize that's how I am in the world. I have my stem and I have my main kind of group of roots, but then I have a lot of branches, and I actually get roots from those branches into the ground. And that made me feel so much calmer about my experience and my attitude to where the home is. And suddenly it's not a problem to have several homes. And suddenly it's not a problem to be committed to have those deep relationships in different places. And I really wanted to share this story for you guys who are listening, to understand that you might not be like everyone else, but there is a meaning to that. And there is a story behind that. And there is just a story that actually makes sense. It will make sense to you. And once you find it and own it, it gets so much more joyful, and it's so peaceful to live your story. Even though even if it's not aligned with what most of people around you are having.
That's awesome. I mean, when you said, I started looking around when you said to own your story, you know, that's like, I have a big art card that's, you know, that's the light bulb moment for me in my workshops. You know, when you could learn how to tell it, you can learn how to use it, you could do that, but the moment that you own it, like, I just feel like I saw that, you know, in a sense, you know, that story of the tree and the roots is like, then you can do something with it.
Yeah.
Because you believe that you're here and you're here for a purpose.
Yes.
I was thinking when you were in the beginning of that realization story is there's so many movies about not having a home. There's so much music about. There's a Steve Earle, I have to look it up. It's called Goodbye Guitar Town, and it's about not having a home ever, and you know, moving around, and it's just it's for me those things, those emotional things that can hit you. If they hit you the right way, you can it can be an anthem for you. If they hit you at the wrong time in the wrong way, they could really bring you down.
Yes.
You know, so I learned. And part of my transformation is like when I heard a song that would put me into a space that wasn't going to serve me, I learned quickly not to dwell there and to just, I mean, it's like watching a movie. I don't really need to see a movie that's going to bring me down. You know, there's certain things that we can, you know, that's just me. That's just me, because probably part of my problem is I get lost in the reality. I get lost in the emotion. I think that actually what happened to me in my film business, I got so good at doing these tragic documentaries that I would get so involved emotionally that it would be really physically draining on me. And, you know, so I wouldn't, I'm just sharing with you that I think a lot of us are led by emotion, feeling that we don't fit in. And you're telling us that we do fit in, and that's just our journey. And I think that when we share our journey, you share with our audience today that if you're having that feeling, that tree just tells you, us in those roots, it's okay to have more than one. Yeah. I still feel sometimes, I've been in California a long time, and I see those palm trees, and I feel like I just got here, and I'm like, what am I doing here? I should be home. I should be home. And then I look at the weather, and it's very, very cold back home. So I said, I'm supposed to be in California. As you know, I have a little bit of sense. If I can't have a sense of humor about things, it'll make you, you have to laugh. I have to laugh. If I don't laugh, it becomes much too serious. Life is too short to not have a little fun.
And I think what you're talking about, the red thread, is the self-awareness. It's both about being being able to laugh at your own situation, and it's also about what you've shared right now, right? About the homes, and also about how they're making those dark and kind of pessimistic, or I don't know, depressing movies have drained you as well, or dragged you into that space. We are like that, right? The Joker, now I don't remember the name of the actor. You probably can help me.
Yes, Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah. Thank you. And how he actually ended his life because he went too much into that space where he was exploring that world, right, or trying to live into that world before playing the role, and then he couldn't handle it anymore. He got too much into that, So we are all affected by our environment, and self-awareness is key here to actually not stay in those places that don't serve us. And that can be physical space, but it can also be mental space. And that's what you're talking about with the movies or the music. If it doesn't resonate, if you feel like you're getting down in the spiral because of that, it's really, it's a strength to be able to catch yourself on that and then also to act on that. And that's what I hear that you actually have. And that's what I'm teaching a lot of people, a lot of my clients.
I think it's developing a new set of reflexes. And I mean, the classical composers, the reason there's a minor chord is for emotion. It's an emotional moment to bring you a sadness. I mean, it's a physical, scientific thing. So if we're, everything is timing. If you hear it at the wrong time, like I was saying at the top of our broadcast, it's like if you hear the right story at the right time and you're ready to receive it, great. But if for some reason we have, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, we have to protect ourselves. And if we need to, I mean, I needed to do that. I needed to step out of this, I feel like if I have to show that these people are somehow suffering, I had to get out of the mindset that I don't have to suffer along with them. As a matter of fact, if I'm not suffering, but I can see clearly and objectively, I can portray a story and help someone with their story because I am healthy at that point. I am healthy and I can shepherd you through this, as opposed to going along down with you, and then we both might not make it. I mean, just to be sort of just for illustration purposes, not that dramatic, but it the idea that we need to be strong for the other person that we're trying to help is why we are why we're doing what we do. And I feel that you really have illustrated that today about giving certainly me some more background and some more transformational. And why don't you just talk about, because there's a number of people that I know that come in to try to be entrepreneurs you're in a position where you've got a young family, and a lot of people in your shoes may give up their dream for the entirety of their children's growth, and you're choosing not to do that, and that's something that you can teach also, right?
Absolutely. Thanks for pointing out, Kate. And here I want to be very open and very, very vulnerable at the moment. Yes, my daughter is just under 2 years right now. And honestly, it's a very tough journey. And we are in a new country. We don't have a big social circle to support us. Iceland is an amazing country from the childcare perspective and also from the culture perspective when it comes to the family. Families stay very close. Usually you have like 3 kids. You live within a couple of kilometers from each other, so you can always support each other. We have friends who also have kids, and their parents, they just babysit their kids, so that it's not a problem. For us, it's the whole logistics. If I want to do something in the evening and my husband wants to train at the same time, we need to get a babysitter. And during the COVID times, like now we came back to babysitter, but for many months we didn't have one. And also just going out for a date night instead of staying in the same 4 walls, it's also a project, and those kind of things. And the thing is that it is a struggle. And what I'm really trying very hard is to ask for help. Like last weekend, we actually asked a friend of ours who has a kid and who lives nearby, like, hey, could you take our Maya for a couple of hours and so that they can play with Eric? And we can actually clean our flat. So we arranged a play date for our daughter so that we could actually in peace clean our flat, because it goes so much quicker and so much easier. And those are important things to do. I'm not going to manage everything myself. And it's the same with the business. I'm outsourcing things. Way before I started earning money, I started outsourcing some things to a VA. So I've had a VA since mid-April. And just because I know that I won't be able to do everything myself. And to be able to find some time and some energy to do those strategic steps in my business, I need to hand off some of the more admin work to someone else. So it is about asking help. And that's what I'm doing as well with the coaching, for example. I am having people who are holding me accountable, who are listening to me and giving me the outside perspective. Like, hey, Anna, I hear you doing this now, or I see you like feeling that way right now. Let's do something about that. It's about never staying alone. And it's so easy to sleep on that when we talk about the entrepreneurship. People come into that, and often, especially when it comes from going from the corporate to building your own business, you're like, okay, I didn't want to work with anyone else, so I need to work alone, And it kind of comes to what you were saying, that we kind of start building the corporation within the entrepreneurship world. But here it's a bit, I agree and disagree. You can take the corporation with you to your business, but at the same time, you can actually take the best parts of that with a team building, because we all have our zone of genius, right? And you're going into business to be able to build more on your zone of genius instead of doing 100 other things that don't
right,
like that drain you.
Right.
So
right.
I found a person who loves systems and loves doing some things that I don't enjoy, and outsource those things to her. And she enjoys doing those things, And of course, some of the tasks that my VA is having, they're not super enjoyable for her, but we're just discussing that. But that's the thing, that we should really have, we should shift our mindset from this, doing it all on my own, or, being a proud solopreneur in a way, from that to being an entrepreneur serving people in their zone of genius.
Right. And the rest will come in. The rest will come in, and you'll be able to see it happening. And that's sort of what I meant by the corporate. If you're not careful, that thing will get big and will swallow you up. But it's we teach people to build teams, and then it's up to you to see how big or small, or how it wants to grow and serve, and build basically what your legacy wants to be.
Yeah.
Well, and I could talk to you all day, but generally the Facebook and LinkedIn public don't have a day.
Nowadays, yeah.
I would love for you to tell us, and what we can do is we could share after this. You could share us some places to find you, but tell us what the best place to find you and do a little pitch for us.
So I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn, and actually more on LinkedIn these days, just because of my focus on the corporate. But Facebook is still the jam. So whichever platform you prefer, I would be happy to connect with you guys and support you whichever way you want, and whichever way I can. So I have a private group which is called Let Me Challenge You for Good. At the moment, I'm just about to pivot it so it actually suits the corporate world more as well. But I go live there every week and have either live coaching or guests in different areas of expertise to make it more live, because my jam is having these kind of conversations, Kate, like what we had right now. And that's what I'm doing there. And I'm also very present on LinkedIn. So please reach out to me and have any if you have any questions, or you feel like something resonated with you and you would like to talk more about that, just hit a reply button or a DM button and get in front of my eyes. I'll be happy to see you.
That's awesome. Anna Liebel, leadership and team development consultant / coach. Is that okay if I said that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. You did not disappoint today. I really appreciate you coming on. This is the $1 Million Story series. My name is Keith Salmon, and the reason I call it the $1 Million Story series is because I believe that everyone has a $1 Million story. And a lot of my clients, when they first come in, they say, well, I don't know if I have a $1 Million story. And a lot of times in 15 minutes, 10 minutes, I can prove that you do. And it's just a matter of how you want to use it. And there's plenty of ways to use it in your marketing, in your advertising, in your sales, but also in your business, because you are the product. In a lot of cases, you are the product, and how you relate to your customers and your future customers is what we're talking about here. Foundational stuff. Anna, thank you so much once again. And I am in just, as you know, I love this geographic reach. I'm in Santa Monica, California, and I am incapable of pronouncing your town, but you are in Iceland. Why don't you tell us what town you're in?
Reykjavik.
Reykjavik.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
That was good.
All right. Well, that was my Iceland lesson for today. Well, I can't thank you enough. So we'll wrap it up, and we will see you on the next installment. And if you're watching the replay, thank you for sticking it out. And I really, really appreciate it, Anna. Have a great day today. I'll say that it's Wednesday, but for those on the replay, it could be any day. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kay.